Look at any photo from the 1950s. Any photo, beach, street, church, wedding. Find one overweight woman. You can't. Not one fad diet, not one calorie counting app, not one gym membership, not one protein shake, not one weight loss pill. And an entire generation of women stayed thin their entire lives without trying. Now, look around today. $296 billion spent on the weight loss industry last year. More diets available than any point in human history. More supplements, more programs, more apps, more coaches, more drugs, and 73% of adults over 60 are overweight, with access to everything those women never had. Something doesn't add up. I started pulling nutritional data from the 1950s, government archives, USDA household food surveys, medical records from general practitioners who actually spent more than 7 minutes with their patients. What I found wasn't a diet. It was 6 daily tricks, exposed in how those women shopped, cooked, ate, timed their meals, combined their food. Tricks so embedded in daily routine, nobody called them tricks. Nobody wrote them down. Nobody sold them. They just did them. Every single day without thinking. Those 6 tricks died with that generation, buried under marketing, under fake science, under an industry that makes more money when you're overweight than when you're thin. Every 1950s woman knew these. Your grandmother knew these, and nobody passed them down because the world told her she was outdated. In this video, we will reveal all 6, ranked from least to most powerful. And stick with me because number 2 on this list is the one trick that directly contradicts every modern diet rule, and it's the exact reason those women never gained weight. Every reference is in the description. Also, drop your birthday in the comments below. I read and personally reply to every single comment. Now let's start with trick number 6. This is the one thing every 1950s kitchen had that modern kitchens killed, and your weight hasn't been the same since. Number 6. They saved bacon grease in a jar and cooked everything in it. This one might shock you because we have been told for decades that animal fat is the enemy. But 1950s women were cooking almost everything in butter, lard, tallow, and bacon drippings. That was just normal. Every single kitchen had a coffee can or mason jar sitting right next to the stove where they collected leftover cooking fat, and they reused it constantly for frying eggs, sauteing vegetables, and making gravy. Vegetable oils like canola, soybean, and corn oil barely existed in households back then. Crisco had been around since 1911, but even that was used more for baking than everyday cooking. The default fat was always animal-based, and here's where the science gets really interesting. A 2020 study published in the journal Nutrients compared the metabolic effects of diets high in seed oils versus diets high in saturated animal fats. What they found was that seed oils, which are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, triggered significantly more inflammation in the body. We are talking about a 23% increase in inflammatory markers compared to the animal fat group. And inflammation, as researchers now understand, is one of the core drivers of weight gain. When your body is in a chronic state of low-grade inflammation, it becomes resistant to leptin. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain you're full. So when leptin resistance kicks in, you eat more than you need because your brain literally cannot hear the stop signal. The women of the 1950s never had to worry about this because their cooking fats were not disrupting that hormonal communication. A separate 2021 study from the University of California, Riverside actually tested this on mice and found that a diet high in soybean oil led to a 25% increase in body weight compared to a diet with the same calories from coconut oil. Same calories. Totally different outcome. That tells you it is not just about how much you eat. It is about what your food is cooked in. Now, if you want to bring this trick back into your life, the best approach is simple. Replace your seed oils with butter, ghee, tallow, or coconut oil for daily cooking. Save olive oil for cold uses like salad dressings where it will not oxidize under heat. You do not need to overhaul your entire kitchen overnight. Just start by switching what goes in your pan every morning. The fat you cook and affects every single meal you eat. So even this one change creates a ripple effect across your entire diet. And your hunger hormones will start to function the way they are supposed to, which means you naturally eat less without trying. That alone can shift things more than most people realize. But this next trick goes even deeper into how 1950s women stayed thin without effort. Number 5, they drank a glass of buttermilk and ate pickles with every dinner. If you ever looked inside a 1950s refrigerator, you would find something that barely exists in most modern homes. Jars, lots and lots of jars, pickled cucumbers, sauerkraut, pickled beets, homemade relish, fermented chutneys, and always a bottle of buttermilk in the door. These were not trendy health foods back then. They were just how people preserved things before every kitchen had a massive chest freezer. The pickle jar came out at every dinner. The buttermilk got poured into a glass like it was water. But what these women did not realize was that they were flooding their guts with beneficial bacteria every single day. And the science on this is now absolutely clear. A landmark 2021 study from Stanford University tracked 36 adults over 10 weeks and found that those who ate a diet high in fermented foods had a significant increase in gut microbiome diversity. Their microbial diversity expanded measurably, and at the same time, 19 inflammatory markers decreased. That is a big deal because gut bacteria diversity is now considered one of the strongest predictors of healthy body weight. A 2018 study published in Nature Medicine analyzed the gut bacteria of over 1,600 people and found that individuals with low microbial diversity were significantly more likely to be obese. The connection was so strong that researchers could actually predict a person's likelihood of obesity just by looking at their gut bacteria profile with surprising accuracy. The women of the 1950s were getting a steady stream of natural probiotics from these everyday fermented foods. They were not taking expensive supplements or drinking kombucha from a trendy glass bottle. They were just eating pickles with dinner and drinking a glass of buttermilk in the afternoon like their mothers did before them. And that consistent daily exposure is what matters most. A 2022 study in Cell Host and Microbe found that occasional probiotic use had almost no lasting impact, but daily consumption of fermented foods over just 6 weeks created lasting changes in the gut microbiome that persisted long after. The key word there is daily. That is exactly what 1950s women were doing without even thinking about it. To bring this back, the easiest way is to add one small serving of a naturally fermented food to your day. Real sauerkraut from the refrigerated section, not the shelf-stable kind that has been pasteurized and killed. Traditional pickles made with salt brine, not vinegar. Plain yogurt or kefir. Even a forkful of kimchi with your meal works great. Start small and stay consistent. Your gut bacteria will begin to shift within weeks, and as that happens, your cravings decrease and your body becomes dramatically better at regulating fat storage on its own. This one habit is powerful, but the next trick on our list takes things to a completely different level. Before we roll on, hit like and make sure you're subscribed. The next part might surprise you. Number 4, they served a roast at noon and only had soup for supper. This is one of the most overlooked differences between 1950s eating patterns and modern ones. Back then, dinner was often called supper, and it was always a lighter meal. Lunch, or what many families actually called dinner, was the big event. That is when the roast came out. That is when the table was fully set with plates and glasses and real napkins. The largest calorie load of the day happened somewhere between 12 and 2 in the afternoon. By evening, the family sat down to something simple like a bowl of soup with bread, some cold cuts and cheese, or just warmed up leftovers from midday. Today, it is completely reversed. Most people eat their smallest meal in the morning, grab something quick for lunch at their desk, and then consume the absolute majority of their daily calories after 7 p.m. while watching television. And science now tells us that this modern pattern is a disaster for metabolism. A 2013 study published in the International Journal of Obesity followed 420 overweight participants for 20 weeks. Both groups ate the same total number of calories, but the group that ate their main meal before 3 p.m. lost 25% more weight than the group that ate their main meal later in the evening. Same food, same calories. The only variable was the timing of when they ate it, and the reason comes down to something called your circadian metabolic rhythm. Your body does not process food the same way at all hours of the day. Insulin sensitivity, which determines how efficiently your body handles sugar and stores fat, is highest in the morning and early afternoon. By evening, your insulin sensitivity drops significantly, and your body becomes much worse at processing food. A 2020 study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that eating a large meal at night caused a 10% higher blood sugar spike compared to eating the exact same meal in the morning. That extra blood sugar has to go somewhere, and usually it gets shuttled straight into fat storage cells around your midsection. The 1950s housewife had no idea about circadian biology, but her daily schedule lined up perfectly with it by pure accident. The big meal was cooked and served while the sun was high overhead. By the time evening rolled around, the family ate something light and went to bed without a heavy stomach. To apply this in your own life, try gradually shifting your calorie distribution earlier. Make lunch your most substantial meal of the day and keep dinner lighter and simpler. You do not have to do it perfectly every single day. Even moving 60 to 70% of your total food intake to before 3 p.m. can make a noticeable difference within weeks. Researchers say the metabolic advantage of early eating is one of the most consistent findings in all of modern nutrition science. The 1950s women got this one exactly right by pure accident, and it kept their waistlines small without a single minute of calorie counting ever. And yet, there is still a trick ahead that might matter even more than this one. Number 3, they walked 2 miles to the store instead of driving 2 minutes. Here's a number that puts absolutely everything into perspective. In the 1950s, the average American woman walked between 5 and 6 miles per day. Today, the average is just 1.5 miles. That is a massive drop, and nobody talks about it. And the important thing to understand is that 1950s women were not walking for fitness or for exercise. They were walking to the grocery store 6 blocks away, walking to the post office to mail a letter, walking around the house doing chores on their feet all day, walking to visit a neighbor 3 streets over, walking their children to school every single morning, and then walking back. It was not exercise. It was just how life worked. And modern science has a specific name for this kind of movement. It is called NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. NEAT is the energy your body burns through all the physical activity that is not deliberate, structured exercise. And a groundbreaking 2005 study published in the journal Science by Dr. James Levine at the Mayo Clinic found that NEAT is actually the single biggest variable in daily calorie burn between lean and obese individuals. He found that lean people burned an average of 350 more calories per day through NEAT alone compared to their obese counterparts. That is 2,450 extra calories burned per week without ever setting foot in a gym. Over a full year, that adds up to roughly 36 pounds of potential fat loss just from daily movement. The 1950s woman was a neat machine without ever hearing that term in her life. She was on her feet cooking from scratch, cleaning every room by hand, hanging wet laundry on the clothesline outside, scrubbing floors on her hands and knees, and walking to and from errands multiple times every single day. A 2019 study in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology found that each additional 1,000 steps per day was associated with a 28% reduction in the risk of premature death and a measurable decrease in body mass index across all age groups. The 1950s lifestyle naturally included 10,000 to 12,000 steps without anyone deliberately trying. The modern solution here is not about hitting the gym harder or buying a treadmill. It is about moving more throughout the entire day in small, natural ways that add up. Take your phone calls while standing and pacing around the room. Walk to nearby errands instead of automatically driving. Do household chores by hand instead of relying on every gadget. Park farther away from every entrance. These tiny additions stack up incredibly fast. Research consistently shows that low-intensity, consistent movement spread throughout the day is actually more effective for long-term weight management than a single intense gym session followed by 8 hours of sitting completely still. The 1950s women understood this instinctively through their daily lifestyle, and their bodies reflected it perfectly in every photograph. Now, the next trick on our list takes aim at something most modern people never even consider. Number 2. They sat down for 3 meals and never touched food in between. This one sounds so ridiculously simple that most people will completely dismiss it without thinking twice. But it might be one of the most powerful metabolic tricks that 1950s women ever practiced. Back then, snacking between meals was considered either rude, unnecessary, or a sign of poor self-discipline. The cultural norm was 3 meals a day, period, end of story. There were no granola bars stashed in the pantry, no bags of chips sitting on the kitchen counter, no office candy jar to reach into every hour, no mid-morning smoothie from a drive-thru, no 3 p.m. protein bar from a vending machine. You ate breakfast at the table, you ate lunch at the table, you ate dinner at the table, and that was the end of it. If you got hungry between meals, you simply waited until the next one. And modern research now shows that this pattern of eating is incredibly beneficial for fat loss and metabolic health. The reason comes down entirely to insulin. Every single time you eat anything, even a small snack, your body releases insulin to process the incoming food. When you eat 3 meals a day with no snacks in between, your insulin rises 3 times and then has long stretches of complete rest between each meal. But when you snack constantly throughout the day, which is exactly what most modern people do, your insulin stays elevated almost all day long without ever getting a real break. A 2019 study in the journal Cell Metabolism found that constant insulin elevation suppresses your body's ability to burn fat by up to 50%. Your body simply cannot access its own stored fat for energy when insulin is always circulating. It is like trying to withdraw money from an ATM that is permanently locked shut no matter how hard you try. The 1950s eating pattern created natural fasting windows of 4 to 5 hours between each meal. That is more than enough time for insulin to drop back down and for your body to switch into fat-burning mode automatically. Researchers call this metabolic flexibility, which is the ability of your body to seamlessly switch between burning incoming food and burning stored body fat. A 2020 study from the National Institutes of Health found that people who ate only 3 meals per day had 29% lower fasting insulin levels compared to people who ate the exact same total calories spread across 6 smaller meals and snacks throughout the day. Lower fasting insulin means dramatically more time spent actually burning fat. The modern snacking industry, which now generates over $150 billion annually in the US alone, has convinced people that eating every 2 to 3 hours somehow boosts your metabolism. But the science simply does not support that claim. Meal frequency has almost no measurable impact on your metabolic rate whatsoever. What it does impact is insulin, and that impact is profoundly negative when you never give your body a proper break from food. To adopt this trick yourself, try eliminating all snacks and eating only at your three main meals each day. Make each meal genuinely satisfying with adequate protein, healthy fat, and fiber so that you are not desperately starving between them. The hunger you feel during the first few days is mostly habitual and psychological, not truly physical. Within a single week, most people find that their appetite completely regulates itself naturally. This one change alone can unlock fat burning that has been completely shut down for years. And now we finally arrive at the single most important trick on this entire list. Number 1, they made every meal using only ingredients their grandmother would recognize. This is it. This is the one that every single researcher points to when they try to explain why 1950s women were so much leaner than women today. And when you truly understand the science behind it, everything else on this entire list clicks into place perfectly. In the 1950s, ultra-processed foods made up less than 5% of the average American diet. Today, ultra-processed foods make up 73% of the entire U.S. food supply, or roughly 60% of the total calories the average American eats every single day. That is a complete and total inversion of how humans ate for thousands of years. And the landmark study that finally proved why this matters so profoundly came from the National Institutes of Health in 2019. Researcher Dr. Kevin Hall designed the first ever randomized controlled trial directly comparing ultra-processed food diets to unprocessed whole food diets under strict laboratory conditions. Both groups were given meals with identical calories, identical macros, and identical amounts of sugar, fat, fiber, and protein on paper. The only difference was whether the food itself was processed or whole. The results were absolutely staggering and shocked the nutrition world. The ultra-processed group ate 508 more calories per day completely on their own and gained an average of 2 pounds in just 2 weeks. The unprocessed group actually lost 2 pounds during that exact same time period. That is a 4-pound swing in just 14 days from food processing alone, with everything else held constant. Ultra-processed foods override your natural hunger and fullness signals completely. They are specifically engineered with precise combinations of sugar, salt, fat, and artificial flavors that trigger dopamine responses in the brain, remarkably similar to addictive substances. A 2023 Stanford study, the exact one we mentioned at the very start of this video, found that participants who simply eliminated ultra-processed foods for just 8 weeks reduced their body fat percentage by an average of 3.2% without changing their calorie intake or their exercise routine at all. The researchers called this finding remarkable and stated that food processing quality itself is the most underestimated single dietary factor in the entire modern obesity epidemic we are currently facing. The 1950s woman cooked virtually every meal from complete scratch using real whole ingredients. Her bread came from flour, water, yeast, and salt, and nothing else. Her meals were built around vegetables from the backyard garden, meat from the local butcher shop, eggs from nearby farms, and fruit that was actually in season at that time of year. There were no ingredient labels to read because the food she used only ever had one single ingredient. To bring this back into your own life, you absolutely do not need to become a 1950s housewife spending all day in the kitchen. Start by swapping just one processed item per week for its whole food alternative. Replace store-bought salad dressing with simple olive oil and fresh lemon. Replace packaged sliced bread with real bakery bread that only has 4 or 5 ingredients listed. Replace flavored sweetened yogurt with plain yogurt topped with actual real fruit. Cook just one more meal at home each week than you currently do right now. Each single swap pulls you meaningfully closer to the way humans naturally ate for thousands of years before the processed food industry quietly took over our kitchens and expanded our waistlines. The 1950s women did not have a secret diet plan. They simply had a normal, healthy relationship with real food that came from the earth. And that is the single most powerful weight loss tool that has ever existed in human history. So there you have it. 6 unspoken diet tricks that 1950s women followed without ever reading a nutrition label or downloading a fitness app. They cooked everything in real animal fats saved in a jar by the stove. They ate fermented pickles and drank buttermilk with every meal. They served the big roast at noon and only had soup for supper. They walked miles every day just running normal errands. They sat down for 3 meals and never touched food in between. And above all else, they made every single meal from scratch using only ingredients their grandmother would recognize. None of this required willpower. None of it required a gym membership or a monthly subscription. It was simply how daily life worked before the modern food industry rewired absolutely everything about the way we eat. And the beautiful thing is that every single one of these tricks is completely available to you right now today. You do not need to go back in time. You just need to bring a few of these forgotten habits forward into your modern life. Start with 1. Try it for 2 weeks. See how your body responds. Science says you will be genuinely surprised by what happens. If this video opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what is coming next. We have a lot more hidden health secrets to uncover together. Thank you so much for watching.